If the Almighty had wanted to create something finite, we wouldn't exist, because he created an infinite desire to receive, which he wants to endlessly fulfill. And this desire to receive, which wants to enjoy endlessly, is precisely this infinite evil. It's just that right now it appears as evil because it is uncorrected. And in the end, when we acquire a new nature, the intention for the sake of bestowal will turn it into a white angel, and it will serve holiness. It will draw the light for the sake of giving. But right now, it draws the light for itself. The desire will draw the light onto the collective soul. This is in the spiritual sense. But in the material world, there are no problems. Everyone can do what they want. Someone might heal, someone might cook. Everyone will do what is reflected in material reality, but in the spiritual, it is about drawing the light onto the common field. He says that a person of holiness was originally created as a spiritual perceiver, that is, a human being. But we live in a world where, as you can see, people walk around us who are not at all interested in spiritual attainment or serving the Creator, yet they behave like people. For example, they dress like people, talk like people, and go to work like people. But if you ask them, do you want to serve the Creator? Do you want to fulfill His commandments? After all, that is what it means to be human. What will they say to you? Why would I need that? That's just madness. Are you out of your mind? You have to live for material things. You need to save money in the bank, and you have to grab everything you can from this life. Step over others. Use everyone for your own benefit, just like they keep showing us over and over again in all sorts of psychological trainings. Love yourself, care about yourself, live for yourself. That is, even scientists, people of all kinds, artists, scholars, progressive individuals, they also don't behave like servants of the Creator, nor like those who seek spiritual attainment. And this is the world we live in. How did evil become materialized in our world? It materialized as someone who looks like a human, a monkey. That is, this person who behaves like a human, like a spiritual seeker. You can't tell the difference. You think it's a person, but it's not a person, it's a monkey. And that's how evil materialized in our world, he said. But these spirits, demons, they didn't materialize. They're invisible to the human eye. And that's why a person lives in a world of concealment. He thinks that what revolves around him is human. That is, these forms appear human, but in reality, they're all forms of a monkey. And he said that this is a profound thing. Why are the righteous compared before the Almighty to a monkey before a human? What is the meaning of this statement? Because even a righteous person, when he wants to emulate the Creator, he behaves like the Creator. That is, the Creator is a giver, and he wants to be a giver. The Creator thinks about others, and he thinks about others. He clings to him through his qualities, meaning he becomes similar to him. But that still doesn't mean he has become the Creator. He can never become the Creator. He can only resemble him. That is, to be similar. The very attainment that comes from the Creator, true attainment, does not come from a person. And so, as long as the righteous person behaves in a way that resembles the Creator, he still hasn't reached such an attainment where the Creator has given him a new nature. This is not yet the Creator's response. These are his own efforts from below. And as long as he makes these efforts from below and uses his imagination, thinking that he is becoming similar, he is still acting like a monkey. Until he receives an answer from above, he will not truly acquire a new nature. The force that made Adam sin was the Almighty. There is no other force besides the Almighty. He created a robot, an angel of sorts, whose purpose was to test man. That is, the Almighty gives him tasks, gives him commandments, and this angel, as it were, acts as his opponent. What is this similar to? It's like when a king wants to help his son grow, so he gives him a teacher, a wise man, who asks him tricky questions to test his knowledge. And so this so-called evil angel was supposed to bring about good by developing him through these trials. But since the person made a mistake and brought about the shattering of the vessels, the whole reality broke down to such an extent that this person no longer perceives this angel in the way the Creator originally made him. He doesn't see him as an examiner. He perceives him either as evil that gets in his way or as the greatest pleasure in his life, because he lives under the power of this angel, under the power of egoism. And this entire global force of evil that exists in the world is not just something individual for one person, it is global for all souls. It influences people in such a way that they chase after pleasures and enjoyments, and as if fall under its power. Not so that it would influence a person's development, but so that it would begin to rule over him to such an extent that he cannot escape its grip. Well, of course, except for those who are engaged in what we are doing, that is, following the path of the Creator. Every impurity has a root in holiness. If you disconnect impurity from holiness, it will disappear. How can this be done? It can't. Our sages tried to do this, but they couldn't. Because if you disconnect the desire to receive and it disappears, then creation itself will disappear. The Almighty made it so, such an interesting puzzle, that you can't separate this evil from creation, because He said it is infinite. As soon as you turn it off, creation disappears. Creation itself is the desire to receive. The question is how you use it. If you know how to use it properly, then there is no evil at all, but if not, it disconnects you from the Creator. That's why it's called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Here, it's a dual state. If you do something wrong, there will be evil. If you do it right, there will be good. Here, the kind of faith is such that it leads to concealment, so that a person doesn't even want revelation anymore. He wants to remain in this concealment and makes all sorts of efforts to find pleasure within it. In other words, he doesn't want the Creator, doesn't want to interact with Him, and doesn't want to follow His laws. From this, all sorts of forces of sorcery and impurity have emerged, which conceal the Almighty and reveal their own charisma. This is how people behave who want to engage in spirituality, drawn to these spirits, to all sorts of attainments, not to reveal the Creator. You can't get rid of the evil inclination. You can use it to serve the Creator, or you can disconnect from Him. That's why this state is called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And if you use it correctly, you'll use charisma to serve the Creator. But if not, you'll strengthen the shadow and increase your charisma to such a degree that you'll fall into pride. The one who is perceptive senses that the Shekinah is speaking to him, while the one who is not perceptive feels the egregores that people have created connect to them and think it's the Shekinah. For example, communists lived for communism's bright future. Was the idea above human? Yes. Did they have a common field? Yes. Did they have like-minded people? They did. No Creator. People come up with all sorts of different ideas about what to live for a healthy lifestyle, naturalists, people who want to eat naturally, for the sake of health, for a healthy way of life. Does a common field form? Yes. Do you start to feel a sense of belonging to this movement? Yes. Do some forces from this common field reach out to you? Yes. Do you feel that this is connected to the collective soul, to the Shekinah, for the sake of the Creator, because He is the one who gives such laws? No. Here's an example of how this can work, and then all sorts of evil can come out of it. For instance, there are people who, because they protect animals, there really are such people, they're ready to kill other people to save animals. So the distortion goes so far that they fall into pride and selfishness because they want to save animals. They're ready to destroy a human being who by level and status is higher than an animal, all because of their distorted perception. It is said that there are 70 ministers of the nations of the world, that each nation has its own special egregore, that is, an angel who stands over that nation. But in reality, they all should serve the Shekinah, because this is the common field of all creation. Everyone will return to the Creator. It's just a matter of how quickly. And this also depends on those who today no longer want to be like apes, but want to be servants of the Creator, spiritual seekers, for whom the world was created. If there are more of them, then people will become truly human, but for now, it's just an outer shell. When the Almighty answers you, then it will be real. For now, we are doing things on our side like apes. And that's why, from this date, where we act on our own like apes and don't wait for an answer from the Creator, this shadow is drawn out. So on one hand, it's like faith, but on the other hand, the concealment grows stronger and a person gets used to living in it. I'll answer my own questions. I'll achieve everything with my own hands. And that's it. They stop relying on the Creator, stop waiting for Him to give them an answer. That's why we've already studied together in one of the weekly Torah portions, where the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya, said that there's a difference between the Creator's love and the love that we try to show towards Him. If a person hasn't yet felt what the Creator's love is, that is, it hasn't descended upon him from above, then for now, he's still like a monkey. He tries to love Him in his own way, through his own efforts, which he thinks is love, until he is granted from above the feeling of what the Creator's love truly is, specifically without any desire to receive something in return.